Hello guys, this is the Behooded Files here, and today I want to talk to you guys about something that really just, pissed me off today. If you read the title of this video, then you know what I'm going to talk about. But for those who don't know, I really love Warhammer. It's become one of my personal hobbies over time, and probably become the one that I'm so far still passionate about to this day. Can't really say the same for my passion for Star Wars, but hey, you grow out of something and you get into something else. But today I want to talk to you guys about a certain video that I saw that just completely ruined my fucking day. Now, what video is this? Well, it's on the title. It's called The Problem with Warhammer 40k by a person named Adam something, who from what I've seen from his channel is basically just one of those leftist YouTubers, like bread tubers, if you will. People who just are the pinnacle of complaining about every single goddamn thing in a fictional setting and not understanding the lore and trying to misconstrue it to say that, oh, if you agree with this thing, you're a Nazi, or if you agree with that thing, you're this, and etc. Well, today I've decided I'm going to make a response to this person's garbage-ass fucking review of Warhammer, and to basically tell you guys how much shit this guy is full of. So before I start swearing my head off like a sailor, I just want to say thank you for enjoying or taking the time to click on this video, and if you haven't already, click that subscribe button and make sure to check out some of my other content. I just want to say it's great to be back. I was sick for a few weeks, so that's why I wasn't posting enough. But hey, it's okay, I'm back now. And all this other stuff. But anyways, let's get into why this video right here is the worst example of Warhammer criticism I think I've ever heard. Let's get into it.
Warhammer is a universe where people fight wars using hammers. Okay, not really. Warhammer 40k is a massive, bombastic universe in the grimdark future of the 40th millennium where humanity is fighting wars on an epic scale on multiple fronts against all sorts of horrors. Space orcs, space elves, literal demons from hell, humans corrupted by literal demons from hell, the Zerg, and also the Tau.
Which is exactly what Warhammer is. And as you will see later on, this guy really shows how much he doesn't understand the setting. But I digress, we'll get into that stuff when we get to that stuff.
Just the latest Space Marine 2, with more than 2 million copies sold worldwide. But the Warhammer IP has not been without its controversies. We now have gamer-gators accusing the parent company, Games Workshop, of turning the game woke by introducing into it the most absurd creatures of all. Women. No, wait, it's actually even more ridiculous. Gamer-gators are mad that Games Workshop changed the lore of one of the factions that no one plays or cares about by saying that some of its soldiers can be women. If you want to, I mean, it's you assembling the miniatures, you can decide what head you put on them. And this resulted in a global outrage among people who have never touched a Warhammer miniature, or a woman. That's it, Games Workshop. I could suspend my disbelief for space orcs, space elves, and hell in space run by space demons, but women? If women are real, how come I never touched one? On the other hand, opposite to the Gamergators, we have an increasing number of voices saying that Warhammer 40k is starting to become problematic by turning from a satire of fascism into a celebration of it, especially with the latest Space Marine 2 game. Gamergators counter this by accusing such critics of overreaction. It's just a game, you're taking it way too seriously, nobody wants to be a literal space Nazi, you guys need to chill the fuck out, they say.
Now the whole female custodes controversy is something that I've already talked about on this channel in my female custodes video. My thoughts on the female custodes. A video that I did and still do relatively have the same opinions on it. Yes, on the one hand, the female custodes when they first were announced and first came out seemingly weren't as bad as everyone was saying. On the one hand, yeah, you can still create your own male custodes if you want to. It's not like they're saying that all custodes are female now and you can't make male custodes anymore. No, you can still make male custodes. But on the other side of the spectrum, what I do agree with is that in terms of GW, it just feels really forced, especially when they decide to release a new female unit for an army that barely anyone plays. Like, for a company that wants to proclaim it's so diverse and all this other stuff, they kind of just went with the cheap route. I mean, at that point, they should have just made a whole army kit with female guardsmen, or, added more lore to the Adeptus Sororitas, or, create a new faction that's more female-focused and female-based, But why, take the faction that no one barely ever plays and just say, oh, we have females in it now? It's almost like GW was trying to pander towards these people rather than actually giving them diversity, which is something you can painfully point out in a lot of companies over the years, where instead of actually making interesting characters and unique stories based around these, based around diversity and all this other stuff, instead they just go for the cheap route and are like, yeah, we have a woman and a black man, which means we are all inclusive and definitely not looking for any brownie points. Yeah, that's what basically the other half of me is saying about female custodies. GW fumbled the bag when it came to them, because they could have done something that's still lore friendly and still introduces the concept of diversity. I don't know, having the female custodies be a new thing in the lore. Let's say Belisarius Call ends up creating a new gene stock that allows for, the convergence of new female custodies and all this other stuff. Then you could have rolled with that, but saying that the female custodies have always existed just kind of feel like a slap of the face to the lore. So yeah, I'm still kind of mixed on the female custodies controversy, even if my video has some parts that really haven't aged that well, you could say.
Predecessor of Warhammer, being one of the trailblazers of hard science fiction. Its setting is also similar to Warhammer's. We have a sort of centralized, militaristic human empire called the Terran Federation, battling it out with various alien species, including giant space bugs. Much like Warhammer, Starship Troopers grew out of an original niche IP. With Warhammer 40k, it was the tabletop game. With Starship Troopers, it was a book which later got adapted into series, movies, and games, making the IP transition from niche to the relative mainstream. Now, tabletop Warhammer is very different from video game Warhammer, Space Marine 2 in particular. And in the same way, there is a big difference between Starship Troopers the book and Starship Troopers the movie. The 1997 movie, which was at the center of that god-awful discourse. The Starship Troopers book is rather jingoistic. Some people called it fascist literature, but I don't really agree with that label. The book is militaristic, obsessed with toughness and masculinity, heroism and honor, but it's otherwise not covert fascist propaganda or anything. It was written by a former soldier at the height of the Red Scare and McCarthyism in the 1950s. So as far as I can see, Starship Troopers is really a product of its time. It's still very right-wing, idolizes the military. In fact, in that world, the only way to gain full rights as a citizen is through military service and so on. But is it fascist? No.
Okay, so for this next part, he essentially just goes on this entire rant about Starship Troopers, which, yeah, Warhammer is kind of inspired by. But what conveniently Andy Something likes to leave out in this video is that Warhammer isn't just inspired by fricking Starship Troopers. Sure, maybe the Guardsmen and the Space Marines are, but there are many aspects of Warhammer that are based around other things, like Lord of the Rings or Dune. And there are many similarities in those fictional settings that you can also find in Warhammer. What am I trying to prove with this? Well, I'm trying to prove that Warhammer isn't just satirical satire of freaking fascism, but rather is a satire of the world itself and the world that we live in, with, a few fantasy twists and sci-fi twists added to it, if you know what I mean. It's not like Star Wars, where it's clearly saying, fascism is obviously evil and the rebellion's good and all this other stuff. Because in Warhammer, every single faction is effed up in its own unique ways. And as we will later get into, you will definitely see that. But moving on.
fascist empire. I mean, the director put Neil Patrick Harris in a literal SS uniform. The message is very clear. Also, the brain bug scene is followed up by a propaganda video in which people gleefully tortured the brain bug, so there's that too. But some disagreed with this assessment. A lot of people legitimately did not understand how anyone could take the side of the bugs, empathize with the bugs even, when all the Terran Federation characters are attractive and the bugs are disgusting. And I mean, that's the whole point? The way you instinctively feel about the bugs is how a white supremacist feels about blacks or how a Nazi feels about Jews, revolting freaks to be crushed under their boots. Not coincidentally, this is often how Jews were depicted by Nazi propaganda, disgusting insects to be purged from the face of Earth. The movie essentially challenges you to take the side of the group you were conditioned to hate. And oh boy, did many people fail this test. The discourse essentially became an indicator of who would fall for Nazi propaganda, where all the Aryan Germans are depicted as tall, strong and beautiful, and all the supposed subhumans as revolting freaks. With that, Starship Troopers gave us a very important revelation about the importance of aesthetics. If an otherwise horrible faction is depicted as badass and handsome in an IP, some people will start idolizing them and co-opt their visuals, no matter how monstrous the faction is or how much satire you heap on. And this brings us to Warhammer 40k.
Or maybe the reason why the bugs in Starship Troopers are bugs is because insects are kind of disgusting and at the same time fucking horrifying. I mean, do you even know, like, how cruel the fucking bug world is? I'm not even joking. Like, the insect kingdom has to be the scariest and the worst place fucking to live in as an animal. Like, spiders, they'll wrap you up in silk and, like, drain your bodily fluids away. Fucking, like, praying mantises will fucking grab you and just eat you alive. I'm not even mentioning ants who literally swarm on top of their prey and tear you apart as well. Or, you know, creatures like the Bombardier beetle that literally spew acid at you and burn you alive. Like, fuck, the insect world just sounds like a complete another nightmare. And that's probably the reason why things like Warhammer 40k and Starship Troopers, StarCraft, and you name it, always have the giant alien bug stereotype. Because insects are a horrific and mindless force that seemingly tear through their enemies and slaughter and kill millions. And if you've actually seen nature documentaries and all this other shit, for the most part, that is 100% true. Ever seen army ants literally form a bridge to attack a bunch of wasps for no reason other than the fact that they want them out of their territory? No? Okay, well here's this video showing you this. Look kinda familiar? Lo and behold, this guy clearly just wants to say that every single setting that has a giant race of killer alien bugs automatically means that those bugs represent minority groups, even though if you look at the bugs, the way that they act and the way how they look and form, they are not like this at all. Why? Because they are insects. And sometimes when you want to create a horrifically monstrous enemy that you want to be threatening, challenge your heroes and make the odds seem stacked against them, using real-world insects like ants and spiders as an inspiration for that seemingly isn't a bad choice, especially with ants and how freaking brutal they are. Because sometimes people want to be creative and create a mindless force of killing machines without using the whole killer robots cliche, and creating a giant swarm of killer insects who follow a hive mind that just slaughter and eradicate everything that they see is an example of that. It doesn't always have to mean it's an allegory for some minority group. You fucking racist. I mean that especially because in what thought process do you look at this thing and say, oh yeah, that's an allegory for Jewish people? Like, at this point, this guy's more of an incel than the fucking chuds he loves to criticize. Because, like, seriously, like, I don't get this, honestly. Like, you look at a giant alien bug, oh, that's an allegory for Jewish people. Like, come the fuck on. You might as well be creating these stereotypes, buddy. You might as well. But let's continue watching this crap. We still got, like, a long way to go.
This over-the-top horrifying universe is a great niche for tabletop games played by nerds, including yours truly. But what if you want to make a universally appealing AAA video game? How do you implement this idea that everything in the grimdark future is horrible, the soldiers are brainwashed drones dying for nothing, and that the wars you fight are completely hopeless, and all of you are essentially doomed? How do you make an enjoyable AAA game around these ideas? Games Workshop thought long and hard and decided that they'll just kind of forget about most of the grimdark stuff. The Space Marine games, while containing hints of the absurdity of the Imperium, are for the most part made to make the player feel like a cool, epic, badass war hero soldier mowing down thousands of enemies without breaking a sweat. And with that, Games Workshop has made the biggest mistake possible when it comes to depicting fascists. They made them appear cool and badass. And yes, Space Marines are fascists. They're turbo space Nazis who will turn you into minced meat if you say something they deem heretical. Atrocities, purges and genocides are just par for the course for them. If your service to the Imperium means mowing down 10,000 civilians because there might be heretics among them, so be it. You're murdering women and children without any second thought or remorse because you are a mindless drone bred for combat, and that's just what it's like to live under the cruelest and most bloody regime.
First off, that is a tyrannid running around slaughtering innocent people to collect their dead bodies so then it can create biomass. Those people also being women and children. Also, that Tyrannid is not an innocent civilian, it is just a mindless drone the further the hive mind's means to consume and dominate the entire galaxy. There's also this argument about whether or not the Space Marines are actually just brainwashed turbo Nazi soldiers, which I mean, in some aspects, yeah, they are. They are definitely extremely brainwashed and conditioned to follow the Imperium. But to say that they're all just mindless killing machines would be untrue, because there's a lot of, times in the lore, something which Andy Something probably has never read or touched a Warhammer lore book before, because, he's allergic to actually doing his research. There are many times in the lore where Space Marines are seen actually helping people or trying to rebuild human civilization, or sometimes even working with Xenos. Yes, that actually happens sometimes. In one book, the Eldari literally were saved by the Grey Knights after a massive demonic invasion, and even gave them their soul stones. Now granted, the Grey Knights only go after demons in the lore, they don't go after Xenos and don't really care that much about them, but it still shows that there are times where the Imperium has gotten along with aliens before, like the Eldar. And as we will later see, he will try to explain to you why the Imperium secretly hates the Eldar and wants them dead. Well, to be fair, there are a lot of Imperium of Man followers who want them dead, but for the most part, humanity is generally changing to work with the Eldar, and so is the Eldar too. It's just a shame that there are some alien races out there who just want to kill humanity for the sake of killing humanity, so when humanity is backed into a corner and has to defend itself against these alien perpetrators, then they're automatically seen as the bad guys because, well, humanity tried protecting itself. Whoop-de-doo. Just like every other fucking thing.
I invite you to check out the episode in the Garden of Ghosts from the Hammer and Bolter series, where we are treated to a scene of a purged Forge world. No, wait, that's the Adeptus Mechanicus thing, alright. Craft World. That's a giant space habitat, basically, where the Eldari, the space elves, live. Home to millions at minimum. Well, the noble Ultramarines massacred the entire Forge world, murdering untold thousands of men, women and children. Because they were Xenos, therefore degenerate, therefore worthy of death. Shout out to Purity Seal for this lore tip, by the way. You can find his channel under @ThePuritySeal. In popular first-person shooters, however, such things cannot be depicted because your game would be banned worldwide. A Warhammer 40k shooter game true to the lore would be a war crime simulator.
Remember, no rushing.
And it would just be weird playing as a psychotic, murderous maniac committing crimes against humanity for 8 hours without any self-awareness or remorse. Actually that sounds like super fun and— wait, I'm sorry, this video is for people 13 and above. Who let these children in here? But I love playing as an unrepentant murderous psycho. Yeah, try playing Mass Effect as a renegade. Don't believe me? Apparently, according to Mass Effect player stats, 92% of players played as Paragon and only 8% as Renegade. Most people just don't want to be an asshole, not even in video games. But even if a Warhammer shooter was true to form and the player was made to feel like a disposable cog in a purposeless murder machine tasked with the occasional genocide, there are people who would love that and would absolutely play that game. I get that. But if you're making a game, you want to appeal to the widest audience possible, not just to people on terror watch lists. And Space Marine 2, the latest Warhammer 40k game, ended up doing the former, choosing appeal over what I would call honesty about its universe. You're not a mindless, psychotic drone killing in the name of a doomed fascist empire, but a noble, heroic warrior protecting your home from freaks and degenerates. The overt satire is basically gone because it had to be. There are allusions to the Imperium being bad, but not nearly overt enough. A Warhammer 40k true to form would be like a version of Modern Warfare where every second mission is no Russian, only even more bloody and deranged. But if anyone released a game like that, most countries wouldn't even let them publish it. Keep in mind, by the way, that I do like Space Marine 2 and I do think it's a good game. Just before anyone would start yelling at me how the game isn't bad actually. I agree, it's a good game, it's cool and epic and I like it. But there are overarching issues with it which we're currently discussing. Now, the reason why the Warhammer 40k books and tabletop games are allowed to get away with containing atrocities while video games aren't is because in the game you would get to act out said atrocities. At the very least, we would get vivid depictions of them. You don't just read about, say, Space Marines murdering 10,000 women and children, or you don't just play with miniatures of a Space Marine faction which according to the lore once murdered 10,000 women and children. Nope, this is an interactive video game where you are a Space Marine and congratulations, your next mission is to purge a civilian slum of 10,000 where the presence of heretics is suspected. Here's your chainsaw and plasma incinerator, good luck. And then you get dropped onto the map with a counter appearing on your screen standing at 0 out of 10,000. Nobody would want to play that game, and those who even bother to try wouldn't have fun playing it if the game was even legal to distribute, even though such a game would fit perfectly into the Warhammer 40k universe. Such is life under the cruelest and most bloody regime imaginable in the grimdark future. And that's just what they often do to fellow humans. Sentient, non-human civilians, even if not hostile, usually just get instantly murdered or worked to death as slaves. So Games Workshop had to take a different approach with their AAA game. For the sake of broad appeal, they had to gracefully sideline the unspeakable evil and cruelty of the Imperium. You're not committing atrocities, genocides, and other war crimes. Instead, you're fighting an endless horde of Tyranids, insectoid space alien predators, which threaten to overwhelm everything. In contrast to the bugs in the Starship Troopers movie, Tyranids are not the victims of aggression. Their singular goal is to devour absolutely everything. They are a force of nature, basically, and there is nothing morally wrong with killing them. The other enemy faction appearing in Space Marine 2 are the Forces of Chaos, who are just evil. Once again, nothing wrong with killing them. So your character, Titus of the Ultramarines, is doing the good thing, really. He's a protagonist. He's also a brainwashed space Nazi psychopath prepared to commit even the most heinous atrocities without a hint of doubt should his masters command him. But let's not portray that, because that would be a downer for the average player. Therefore, in Space Marine 2, Titus is mostly portrayed as a selfless war hero instead. And I know that there is a bit more nuance to the story and the character, especially in light of the previous game, but that unfortunately doesn't matter. That's stuff for lore wonks, not your average player who might not even have played the previous game. The nuance is lost on them. And because of this, due to the satire taking a backseat, we have lunatic space Nazis made to look like heroes tirelessly fighting against a tidal wave of freaks that threaten to destroy their glorious civilization. Which is exactly how, say, white nationalists think of themselves, isn't it? The brave—
Okay, for starters, it's a fucking video game, dude. Like, I hate that they take, like, fictional media so goddamn seriously to the point where we have this shit where this guy's like, actually, if you play a game where you kill people, that's bad. You should play a game that's good. Even though, like, 99% of video games are about that, like, is Mario also fascist because he jumps on Goombas and indiscriminately kills them? Is Pac-Man fascist too because he eats the ghosts in his video games? Is fucking Minecraft fascist because you kill the zombies that run at you and try to kill you too? You see what I mean here with this bullshit? Like, seriously, just because there are some games out there that push this thing with like, oh, you have to kill all the civilians or some shit like that. Just because there are some edgy games out there that just love to perpetuate this shit where, like, you're gunning down innocent civilians or some crap like that, does not mean that people don't like having a bit of violence in their video games. There are plenty of first-person shooter video games that a lot of people like that are just about killing things. Like, I don't know, Doom. I love Doom. It's about killing demons. Killing demons is fucking fun because, you know, demons. Fucking Call of Duty. Like I said before, it's a military simulator with a lot of plot lines and stories, hence why a lot of people enjoy it. He also brings up this whole Hammer and Bolter episode, which, to be honest, Hammer and Bolter is kind of a mid-Warhammer series anyway. It has some good episodes and has some boring episodes, and this one in particular is one such example, because in the story it's basically just, the Ultramarines show up on an Eldari planet and kill everybody, and it's essentially a manipulative way to show that, the Imperium of Man's so evil and is the only evil faction in the setting, and the innocent Eldari were only defending their innocent craft world from the Imperium. You want to know something? What if I told you that the Eldar were just as intolerant as the Imperium of Man? Don't believe me? Just watch. Don't believe me? Just watch. The Eldar essentially view themselves as a superior race to every other creature in the galaxy. That includes humans too. And the Eldar have also committed a lot of atrocities because of that. Like, for instance, the Exodate Eldari, you know, those hippie Eldaris that everyone loves? And I kind of do myself. I wish GW would make an army for them, but lo and behold, it's GW. They won't make any cool armies other than Space Marines. But I digress here. The reason, there's times in the lore where the Exodites have literally slaughtered thousands of people, all just because they ended up parking on their planet. And a lot of the times the Exodites have the knowledge and know that these people don't know they're on their planet, yet instead of just kicking them off the planet, they often just purge them instead. That includes tribal humans too. Like, if tribal humans somehow settled on their worlds, they would tell them to get off their planet. And if they didn't get off their planet, they would execute them. But here's the thing. Because these are tribal people who don't understand, instead of leaving the planet, they would just settle in a new cave and then get purged. You're starting to see what I'm talking about here. This isn't even the worst of it. Because believe it or not, the Eldar were kind of as much sadistic assholes as humanity. They kidnapped and enslaved and murdered people during the height of their civilization and birthed the fucking chaos god of degeneracy called Slaanesh. Not to mention, there's also the Drukhari, the cousins of the Eldar, who also do a lot of horrific shit, like flesh crafting, where they essentially take living, breathing people and turn them into cybernetic monstrosities to unleash upon the world, and conduct slave raids, where they literally go to innocent Imperial planets and kidnap these populations and kill them. Why? Because they're evil. Well, they're not just evil, they're doing it to preserve their life essence, and so then that they don't die and have to perpetuate a continuous cycle of suffering, so then that Slaanesh doesn't eat their souls. But here's the thing. In Warhammer lore, one of the Craft World Eldaris made a cure for, the Drukhari, or I don't know what it was, but I know that, the Eldari made a cure where essentially the Drukhari don't have to be sadistic assholes who don't have to kill for the sake of killing anymore. Yet in the lore, they still do it. Why? Because it's almost like they've grown a sadistic pleasure in the hurting and killing other people, which is the main point of Warhammer. It's not a satire. It's not just a satire of fascism. It's a satire of the real world. Because you want to know something about the real world? What I've learned is simply this. No matter what political party you align yourself to, no matter what you believe in or any of that stuff, people will always find ways to justify the absolute most atrocious and horrific stuff, because lo and behold, my ideology is the most superior and all your other ideologies are inferior. And this isn't just from fascist people. A lot of communist stuff has also done a lot of atrocities. You're conveniently forgetting about, Hitler's obviously fucking evil, but Joseph Stalin's also equally as bad. We're talking about a guy who literally executed somebody just because they didn't clap during one of his processions. We're talking about a guy who, after the Red Army liberated a lot of the Jewish Holocaust survivors from concentration camps, proceeded to march them to an icy gulag where they proceeded to to die in horrific deaths and essentially be sent way back to their Holocausty nightmare again, except instead of being executed by Nazis, they're being executed by a Soviet firing squad. Yeah. And that's the point of Warhammer, because the more that you look at Warhammer lore, the more each faction comes across as extremely effed up in their own unique ways. Even the Tau. For as much as I love the Tau and as much as I collect them, even I'll admit they are just as bad as everybody else. They're just a bit sneakier with it. Because at first glance you think the Tau are an all-encompassing, all-inclusive race of aliens from different cultures and different identities and all this other stuff. Well, that's on the surface. Because if you actually dig into the lore, you will find that, oh shit, the Tau practice eugenics, have a caste system, oftentimes seemingly brainwash and control other species to their will, and other times often assimilate other aliens into their collective, oftentimes eradicating most of their cultures in the name of their own ideology, the greater good. Sounds kind of familiar to something else now, does it? And this is really the pinnacle of Warhammer, because I feel like Andy Something thinks that Warhammer is just a satirical take on fascism, rather than being a satirical take on the world itself and how various powerful political systems will often justify their atrocities that they commit under the guidance of their ideology is right, therefore all ideologies are wrong, therefore everything needs to be killed and exterminated. Which is something that no matter what you believe in or what ideology or thing that you take part in is something that's extremely prevalent and something that's proven time and time again, unfortunately, that radical groups from all compasses of the political spectrum and the religious sphere, as well as other ideologies, use in order to justify atrocities. That's the message of Warhammer. It's not satirical fascism the game, it's satirical everything the game. And if you can't understand that, then I'm sorry. Just like how you said that people failed the Starship Troopers test, you ironically failed the 40k test, because you failed to understand the satirical satire of what Warhammer actually is. A satirical look at the world that we live in itself. Except, with space stuff and fantasy stuff thrown in there for extra measure. Because there are many other videos that basically explain that and explain the true meaning of Warhammer, but lo and behold, this guy doesn't want to watch those videos because he knows if he did, then it would just destroy his argument. So he has to create lies and manipulate the setting to make it look like it's just, anti-fascism, the game. Anyways, moving
game, so you won't be meeting them in real life. Online though, Warhammer 40k communities are often literal cancer, with people unironically parroting the fascist propaganda of the Imperium. Burn the heretics, kill the mutants, purge the unclean. It is better to die for the Emperor rather than to live for yourself. An open mind is like a fortress with its gates unbarred and unguarded. Kill lots of Xenos and got coin for the Emperor. Here's this image depicting an Imperium guardsman blowing himself up with an Eldari, basically a space elf, titled The Emperor Protects, with 1.9 thousand likes. The soldier is glad to die for the Emperor and believes that he saved him by letting him die in war. He's been brainwashed that hard. And the comments next to the image are of a similar vein. Approved. When I'm gone, I'll meet the God Emperor, but you, Xeno scum, the only God you'll meet is the Dark God, whatever that is. Cadia stands for Cadia. Cadia is a fortress world most famous for doing the opposite of standing, by the way. There are also common image replies, most of which call for murdering someone, usually the post-author, or non-humans in general, called Xenos. Not just the evil, aggressive ones. No, literally everyone, including sentient Xenos and their civilians who would be otherwise neutral or even friendly. Just kill them all. I've also seen plenty of Warhammer memes about interracial cuckoldry, which is something far-right people online are absolutely obsessed with. Don't look it up, trust me. Now, let's stop here for a moment. Am I not taking this a bit too seriously, pointing at obvious memes and jokes below posts and pretending they're serious? I do realize these memes and replies are jokes, but often they also aren't. Now, hold on, what the hell do I mean by that? How can one thing be two opposite things at the same time? I personally call such memes and jokes Schrödinger's shitpost. They are both a joke and not a joke at the same time. The meme exists in an ideological superposition position until someone engages with it. So suppose someone posts a far-right adjacent meme like this, the Kekistani flag, which is a recolored Nazi Wehrmacht flag, also commonly wielded by neo-Nazi protesters. But here, it's just an edgy joke, you see. Or is it? If the response is negative, say if someone replies with, "Dude, what the fuck is this?" then oh, it's just a joke, it's just a meme, lamau, don't take it seriously. But if the response is positive, like, "Heh, my fellow red-pilled Kekistani brother whom the eco science elites couldn't brainwash," then often the meme is suddenly not a joke. Ha, I know, right? Oy vey. And it's not like the person who posted the Kekistani flag is pretending either way. This is the funny part. Such people legitimately don't know what their intent is with the meme they post. Is it just an edgy joke or is it serious? It depends on the meme's public reception. Of course, not all Warhammer memes are like that, but quite a few of them are. I can tell you a percentage here. So far, I could only determine that a non-trivial number of them exist and that such Schrödinger's shitposts are part of the far-right infiltration and co-opting of Warhammer 40k. It provides a nice little grey zone where you can keep dog whistling or posting what are essentially Nazi memes, only it's Warhammer 40k, so normies will think nothing of it.
Fascistic far-right plot to take over Warhammer. Like, you guys might as well just be as much paranoid as the US was of communism during, like, the fucking Cold War. Because at this point, you guys pretty much see anything that doesn't align with your agenda, point at it and just say, "Oh, that's fascist, he worships Hitler, ha." Like, that's literally all I'm getting right now. And to be honest, I'm fucking sick of it. Like, seriously. Like, unless if you actually are going to prove a good point to me, instead of just showing, like, a bunch of other random stuff from other political, like, right-wing rallies and some shit, and saying, "Oh, it's just the same as the freaking Warhammer memes, you know, purge the heretic, kill the unclean." Like, that's the whole gimmick of Warhammer. It's a grimdark universe where effed up shit happens. You aren't gonna walk up to a Star Wars fan who said, "Oh, hail the Empire," or some shit, and go, "Oh, they're fascist because they said hail the Empire." Like, it's a fucking meme. Like, it's just people having fun with the setting. And if you're so stupid as to just shut them down and be Mr. "I'm gonna be the fun police," then yeah, you can kindly just go through the door, because to be honest, we don't want you here. You can kindly just go at that point. Honestly.
That's nice. But at the same time, Games Workshop is commissioning video games that neglect the satire in favor of a broader appeal, where the hero, who belongs to a literal superior race, selflessly protects his civilization from the marauding hordes of freaks and degenerates. And this is seen by far-right people who, in their own imaginations, are heroes who belong to a superior race, selflessly protecting their civilization from the marauding hordes of freaks and degenerates. And so they identify with Warhammer 40k. They are drawn to Warhammer 40k content. They co-opt the aesthetics of Warhammer 40k. No matter how many statements Games Workshop makes, no matter how much they insist on 40k being satire, as long as the ultra-popular games make the Imperium look cool and badass, righteous even, the far-right will inevitably stay in its orbit and try to co-opt it.
Because the Tyranids are a swarm of ravenous alien space bugs that literally want to devour everything in the setting, and because people are taking a stand and trying to defend themselves from the Tyranids, that automatically makes them right-wing, I guess, even though other factions like the Eldar and the Tau are also against the Tyranids and also fight against them. There are literally times in the lore where the Imperium has aligned itself with the Tau and other Xenos races just to push back the Tyranids, because they all know how dangerous and deadly the Tyranids are in the lore, because they know that if they don't stop them, they'll just wipe them out eventually. Like I said before, this guy knows nothing about 40k. There's also the fact that he also talks about the Chaos Marines and how, like, because they're all degenerate evil, therefore you shouldn't kill them, therefore it's fascist because, you know, the Chaos guys are actually the good guys. Even though Chaos Space Marines are traitors to an extent. They literally betrayed the fucking Imperium and worship dark gods, and they literally go around just being a problem for everybody, slaughtering innocents, taking slaves, fucking just being the worst. And ironically enough, they're just as xenophobic as the Imperium, because they also hate aliens, and they also go on extermination sprees, just like the Imperium does. Because lo and behold, no one is good in this setting. Not to mention the fact that a lot of Chaos Lords are extremely selfish and fucked up people, the fact that they're also just the main antagonist of the setting, and the fact that 99% of them just are, well, plain and simple antagonists. I mean, you can't try to tell me that the Night Lords peacefully invade planets by torturing and murdering innocents and wearing their flayed skin as cloaks, even the skins of dead women and children, just like the arguments that you're making towards the Imperium are somehow the victims, and that the Imperium are the ones who turn them into this, or the Imperium are their enemy, even though if you actually read the lore, you'll know from since day one, they've always been like that, you know? But, once again, this is Andy Something's leaving out crucial information that would destroy his argument, so that's why he left it out. And you know what? For this final clip, I'm not even going to say anything. I'm just going to show you the clip and pretty much throw you face first into this insanity, because this is the point in the video where this guy completely just lost me, and I'm pretty sure lost everybody else who watched this video.
I think what would help is getting more left-leaning people into the hobby. Also, Games Workshop could add more diversity to the Imperium just to make the Chuds angry. Female Space Marines? Hell yeah. Female Adeptus Custodes? Naturally. Adopt us custodes. Also, add more skin colors. The ensuing outrage will basically be free advertising, and those who are put off by that, you don't want them in the hobby anyway. Do you have some more ideas? Feel free to share them in the comments. Normally I don't read them, but this time I'm genuinely interested and we'll go over them at least once. In the meantime, thank you for watching. If you'd like to support my work, consider becoming a patron.
Okay, so this whole guy's argument is that, okay, Warhammer is fascist satire of the world, and that the only way to fix this quote-unquote fascist movement is to just make Warhammer about the other side of the political spectrum and nothing else. So essentially this guy just wants 40k to become like Disney Star Wars or Disney Marvel, because yeah, he just basically wants the setting to just become mindless slop that has no character, no rhyme, no reason, no enjoyment for the fans, just to kick out all those stupid incels and make 40k what he wants it to be. What they want it to be, not what we want it to be. You know what's great about Warhammer? You know what's awesome about this setting? Is the fact that regardless of your political ideology, your sex, your race, your gender, whatever, we could all come together and enjoy this hobby. Like, seriously. We as people, regardless of what we believe in, what our thoughts are on the world, what we agree with and disagree with, can all come together and just enjoy Warhammer. Yet, lo and behold, there are people like this that are just as bad as the far-right people, where they freaking come into your shit and essentially just say, oh, Warhammer is problematic, so the only way to fix it is to let our ideology in. And from there, you basically get shit like what happened to Disney and all this other stuff. Where previously a good written world with a lot of interesting nuances and characters and stories gets completely sidelined just to spread some stupid political message that no one gives a fuck about. And that's exactly it. Because unless if your political message is actually interesting or actually has something to say, then I'm not interested in it. It's one of the reasons why I don't hate every piece of quote-unquote woke media that comes out, because there's plenty of media that I enjoy that have woke elements, but I still enjoy them. Like, I don't know, The Boys, or probably an even better example, Dune, because a lot of them actually have interesting messages about people and politics and all this other stuff. However, it doesn't feel one-sided. It feels like an actual world with a lot of complexities and nuances to it. Whereas this guy wants to paint the world as all the bread tubers want to paint it as. A world where they are right and everyone else is wrong. If you think Warhammer has a gender problem, okay, fair enough. To be fair, there aren't a lot of female, warriors in the setting, even though there are still lots, like the Adeptus Sororitas and female guardsmen and female tech priests. But if GW maybe made more female-based models on those characters and all that other stuff, then yeah, I could see that. But to make a video not only saying that Warhammer is just one, that all the Warhammer video games are one big fascist, like, evil plot, and how they are ruining the franchise, and also how all, like, Warhammer memes and stuff are evil, and essentially just dragging down the enjoyment of this franchise to make it seem like it's the worst franchise ever, and that it's so problematic that all the leftist YouTubers need to come together to force GW to send the literal armies of God himself to smite all the incel right-wing fans and make Warhammer a leftist utopia is so backwards, so stupid, and spits in the face of not just Warhammer fans, but everyone and everything that has come to be a part of the setting, enjoy the setting, everyone and everything. And to be honest, I don't blame the backlash, because honestly, this guy deserved every single negative comment and backlash video that he got for this. Adam something. If you're watching this, I want you to prove to me that you actually understand Warhammer. I want you to actually make a good video talking about Warhammer that doesn't just come across as one-sided bullshit. And if you can't do that, then congratulations, you will always be a person who doesn't understand shit about 40k and barely ever listens to any bit of lore, and is just another leech who has come to the setting to feed. And you just happen to be the biggest leech in that pile. And if you can't do that, well, then you've pretty much proven every single point in my video. That you don't understand shit about 40k and only want it to be about you and your messaging, and not actually caring for the people who actually just want to enjoy the setting and have fun with it. Sure, I'll criticize right-wing people sometimes if they have particularly dumb takes, but that doesn't mean I'm going to leave leftist bread tubers off the hook either. Because to be honest, everybody deserves to be criticized when they make something stupid. And for some reason, this video happens to be the stupidest 40k criticism video of all. Because it is just so misunderstanding of the plots of Warhammer, and definitely was made by somebody who barely even read the books. So, moral of the story, if you're going to criticize Warhammer, at least do your research. I'm the Behooded Files, signing out.